A young man took every penny he had and used it to open an aquarium. He worked tirelessly, growing it from a small roadside attraction into the greatest aquarium ever. Over a lifetime, he amassed the largest collection of sea life ever assembled. He and his team conducted scientific research and ran breeding programs that helped restock populations of endangered species. His teams rehabilitated thousands of injured animals every year. He helped lobby for legislation to protect the oceans and marine habitats. He designed and built the most humane and realistic animal enclosures. He spared no expense in creating innovative and educational exhibits and displays. And then suddenly, laws were passed that outlawed keeping marine mammals. His aquarium had to get rid of all of its best and most loved animal exhibits. No more whales. No more narwhals. No more walruses. The crowds no longer came, and the aquarium started losing money. The man became despondent at how the thing he poured his heart and soul into had begun to crumble. Soon after, he died of a broken heart. At the funeral, the mourners all spoke about how he died because he had lost the thing he truly loved, his purpose. A programmer and his project manager board a train headed through the mountains. They can find no other place to sit, except for 2 seats right across the aisle from a young woman and her grandmother. After a while, it becomes quite clear that the woman and the programmer are interested in each other, as they keep looking at each other. Soon, the train passes into a tunnel, and it is pitch black. There is the sound of a kiss followed by the sound of a slap. When the train finally emerges from the tunnel, the 4 sit there without saying a word. The grandmother thinks to herself, "It was very rude of that young man to kiss my granddaughter, but I am glad she slapped him." The project manager thinks to himself, "I did not think the programmer was brave enough to kiss the woman, but I wish she hadn't missed him when she slapped me." The young woman thought to herself, "I am glad the guy kissed me, but I wish my grandmother had not slapped him." The programmer has a satisfied smile on his face and thinks, "Life is good. How often does a guy have a chance to kiss a beautiful woman and slap his project manager at the same time?" A couple in their 90s were starting to have trouble remembering things. At their checkup, the doctor told them they were both in good shape physically but suggested they start writing things down to help with their memory. That evening, they were watching TV when the husband slowly stood up. He asked, "Want anything while I'm in the kitchen?" His wife said, "Yes, I'd love a bowl of ice cream." He nodded. She added, "You should write it down so you don't forget." He waved her off. "I don't need to write it down. I can remember ice cream," she said. "I'd like strawberries on top." "Better write that down." "I can remember that," he said, a little irritated. "Ice cream with strawberries," she said. "And whipped cream." "You definitely should write that down." Now frustrated, he said, "I can remember it. Ice cream with strawberries and whipped cream." He shuffled off to the kitchen. 20 minutes later, he came back and handed her a plate of bacon and eggs. She stared at it for a long moment and finally said, "Where's my toast?" A farmer named Clyde was in court after a bad tractor accident. The trucking company's fancy lawyer was grilling him. "Mr. Clyde, isn't it true that at the scene of the accident you told the police officer?" "I'm fine," Clyde said. "Well, I'll tell you what happened. I had just loaded my favorite cow, Bessie, into the lawyer snapped. "Just answer the question. Did you or did you not say you were fine?" Clyde tried again. "Well, like I said, I had just gotten Bessie, my favorite cow, into the trailer." The lawyer interrupted a second time. "Your Honor! Please instruct the witness to only answer yes or no." The judge leaned forward and said calmly, "Actually, I want to hear what Clyde has to say about Bessie." Clyde nodded and continued. "We were driving down the road when a big semi blew through a stop sign and smashed into us. I was thrown into one ditch. Bessie was thrown into the other. I was hurt real bad and couldn't move. But I could hear poor Bessie moaning, suffering something awful. A highway patrolman showed up. He checked on Bessie first. After one look at her, he pulled out his gun and shot her between the eyes to put her out of her misery. Then he walked over to me, gun still in his hand, and said, "Now, how are you feeling?" Clyde looked the judge in the eye and said, "Your Honor, at that moment, what would you have said?" Two buddies flew to Canada for a big moose hunting trip. They chartered a small bush plane to take them deep into the Rockies. They hunted all week and managed to bag 6 moose. When the pilot came back to pick them up, he took one look and said, "Whoa there, this plane can only carry 4 moose." The men protested. "Come on, last year we shot 6 and the pilot let us take all of them. Same size plane, too." The current pilot wasn't convinced, but after enough arguing, he finally gave in. They loaded all 6 moose and took off. The plane struggled, climbed a bit, and then couldn't clear the mountains. It stalled and crashed into the trees. Miraculously, the 2 hunters crawled out of the wreckage, bruised but alive. One man looked around and asked, "Do you have any idea where we are?" His buddy looked at the wrecked plane, the trees, and the moose all around them and said, "Yep. I think we're pretty close to where we crashed last year." Little Johnny's moral of the story wasn't quite what the teacher expected. In class one day, the kids were sharing stories that had a moral. Little Susie went first. "I gathered all the eggs from the hen house, but I dropped the basket, and they all broke. Moral: don't put all your eggs in one basket." The teacher smiled. "Very good, Susie." Next was Frankie. "I didn't want to read a dusty old book my mom found in the basement, but she read it to me, and it turned out to be Tom Sawyer, an amazing story. Moral: don't judge a book by its cover." "Wonderful lesson, Frankie," the teacher said. Then little Johnny raised his hand, and the teacher got nervous. He began, "My Uncle Ted was a fighter pilot in the war. His plane got hit. Fire in the cockpit. He pulled the eject handle at the last second." The class leaned in. Johnny kept going. "He parachuted down, right into enemy territory, but not before finishing the bottle of whiskey. He always kept beside the controls." The teacher blinked. "Whiskey." Johnny wasn't done. "He landed in the middle of enemy soldiers. He pulled out his pistol, took out 6 of them before he ran out of bullets. Got his ears shot off doing it too. Then he used his boot knife, took out 3 more. And the last guy, he finished off with the parachute cord." The room was silent. The teacher finally asked, "Johnny, what exactly is the moral of that story?" Johnny shrugged. "Don't mess with Uncle Ted when he's been drinking." A very handsome man decided it was his duty to marry the perfect woman so they could have unbelievably beautiful children. So he set out on a mission to find her. Before long, he met a farmer who had 3 stunning daughters, absolutely gorgeous. The man explained his mission to the farmer and asked permission to court one of them. The farmer said, "Well, they've all been hoping to get married. Look them over and take your pick." So the man dated the first daughter. The next day, the farmer asked how it went. "Well," the man said, "she's wonderful, but she's just the tiniest bit, and you'd hardly notice, pigeon-toed." The farmer nodded and suggested the man try the second daughter. So he did. The next day, the farmer asked again. "Well," the man said, "she's great too, but she's just the slightest bit, again, hardly noticeable, cross-eyed." The farmer nodded. "Well, give the third girl a chance." The man went out with her, and the very next morning he came rushing back, excited. "She's perfect," he said. "Absolutely perfect. She's the one." So they got married right away, and a few months later the baby was born. The man rushed down to the nursery, and nearly fainted. The child was, well, not exactly the beautiful baby he expected. Panicked, he ran to his father-in-law. "How could this happen? With 2 parents as good-looking as we are?" The farmer sighed and said, Well, she was just the teeniest bit. You could hardly tell, already pregnant when you met her. A man who is completely bald and has a wooden leg is invited to a costume party. He wants a costume that doesn't draw attention to either issue, so he writes to a fancy costume shop explaining his problem. A few days later, a package arrives with a note. Dear Sir, enclosed is a pirate costume. The bandana will cover your bald head, and with your wooden leg, you'll look just like a real pirate. The man is offended. The costume highlights his wooden leg. So he writes a complaint. A week later, another package arrives. Dear Sir, sorry about the pirate suggestion. Enclosed is a monk's robe. It will cover your wooden leg completely, and with your bald head, you'll look perfect. Now he's even more upset. First they focused on the leg, now the head. He writes a much stronger letter. A few days later, he receives a very small box with one final note. Dear Sir, thank you for your feedback. Enclosed is a bottle of red syrup. Pour it over your bald head, let it harden, and then stick your wooden leg up your butt and go as a candy apple. A woman rushed into the pharmacy to pick up her daughter's medication. She grabbed it quickly and hurried back to her car, only to realize she'd locked her keys inside. Panicked, she looked around and spotted an old rusty coat hanger on the ground. She picked it up and stared at it helplessly. I have no idea how to use this, she said. Then she bowed her head and prayed. Lord, please, send me someone to help. Within 5 minutes, a beat-up old motorcycle pulled up. A bearded man wearing biker clothes got off and walked toward her. Ma'am, do you need help? He asked. Yes, she cried. My daughter is sick, and I locked my keys in the car. Please, can you use this hanger to open it? Sure, he said. He walked over, and in less than a minute, click, the door popped open. Overwhelmed, she hugged the man and said through tears, Thank you, God, for sending me such a nice man. The biker chuckled and said, Lady, I'm not a nice man. I just got out of prison yesterday. I was in for car theft. The woman hugged him again and sobbed. Oh, thank you, God. You even sent me a professional. Wanda's dishwasher stopped working, so she called the repairman. Since she had to be at work the next morning, she left him detailed instructions. I'll leave the key under the doormat. Just come in, fix the dishwasher, leave the bill on the counter, and I'll mail you a check. And don't worry about my dog, Spike, he won't bother you. She paused, then added very firmly. But whatever you do, do not talk to my parrot. Under any circumstances. The next day, the repairman let himself in and immediately saw the biggest, toughest-looking dog he had ever laid eyes on. But just like Wanda promised, Spike didn't move. He simply watched calmly from the carpet while the repairman worked. The parrot, on the other hand, started in right away, squawking, yelling, mocking him, calling him names, and cursing like a sailor. It went on non-stop. After nearly an hour, the repairman finally snapped. He turned toward the bird and shouted, Would you please shut up, you loud, ugly thing? The parrot went silent for a moment, puffed up his feathers, and then hollered, Get him, Spike! And that, folks, is why men really need to follow directions. A man who was absolutely obsessed with trains finally snapped and stole one. Of course, he had no idea how to operate it, and he crashed it, killing several people. At his trial, he was found guilty and sentenced to the electric chair. Before his execution, they offered him a last meal. He asked for one banana. They gave it to him, strapped him into the chair, pulled the switch. And nothing happened. The chair had never failed before, so by law, they had to let him go. A week later, he steals another train. Crashes it. More people die. He shows zero remorse. He just loves trains. Again, he's sentenced to death. Again, he asks for one banana. Again, the chair doesn't work. They have to set him free a second time. Sure enough, he steals a third train. Same disaster. He's arrested, tried, and sentenced to death once more. When they ask for his last meal request, he says, "1 banana." The guards say, "No way. We know what you're doing. No banana trick this time." So they give him a normal last meal, steak, potatoes, dessert. The next morning, they strap him in, pull the switch, and nothing. Again. The warden storms in shouting, "Did somebody sneak him a banana?" The guard says, "No, sir. We swear. He didn't get a banana." The prisoner shrugs and says, "It's not the banana. I'm just a really bad conductor." A gorilla at the zoo dies of old age just before opening time. He was the star attraction, the one animal everybody came to see. The zoo can't afford a new gorilla right away, so the owner makes a quiet offer to one of the workers. "We've got an old gorilla costume in storage. If you put it on and act like the gorilla for a while, I'll pay you an extra $100 a day." The worker agrees, puts on the suit, and goes into the enclosure. To his surprise, the visitors love him. He pounds his chest, swings around, and soon crowds are showing up just to see this amazingly lifelike gorilla. After a month, though, the excitement starts to die down. So he decides to put on a little stunt. He climbs to the top of the enclosure, swings over into the neighboring lion habitat, and hangs from the safety net above it. A huge crowd gathers, gasping and pointing. Then, his hands slip. He falls right into the lion's den. Panicking, he starts yelling, "Help! Somebody help me! I'm not really a gorilla!" Suddenly, a massive lion leaps onto him, pinning him to the ground. The lion leans in close and whispers, "Pipe down, buddy, or you'll get us both fired." An hour into an Airbus 380 flight from London to New York, a young blonde in economy stands up, gathers her purse from the overhead locker and struts up to and through the dividing curtain and sits her ass down into a first-class seat. The flight attendant rushes quickly over to check her ticket, and after she does so says, "Ma'am, you paid for an economy seat. This is the first-class section. Could you please return to your allocated seat?" The blonde replies, "Hey, listen and listen good. I'm blonde, I'm beautiful, I'm going to New York, and I'm staying right here." She point-blank refuses to move, so the flight attendant has no option but to tell the pilot and co-pilot about the situation. The co-pilot comes out to see her and tries to explain, but the blonde repeats, "I'm blonde, I'm beautiful, I'm going to New York, and I'm staying right here." He comes back and tells the pilot. The pilot says, "She's blonde? Don't worry, I've got this, I speak blonde. After all, I'm married to one." He comes out of the cockpit and walks to where the blonde is sitting and whispers something in her ear. After a moment's thought, the blonde stands up and says, "Oh, I'm so sorry," and returns to her seat in economy. Everyone is stunned. "What on earth did you say to her?" they all ask. He smiled and replied, "I told her first class is not going to New York." It was the mailman's last day on the job after 35 years of delivering mail through every kind of weather to the same neighborhood. At the first house on his route, the whole family greeted him, congratulated him, and sent him on his way with a big gift envelope. At the second house, they gave him a box of fine cigars. At the third house, he received a set of terrific fishing lures. But at the fourth house, things got interesting. A stunning woman in a revealing negligee answered the door. She took him by the hand, led him inside, closed the door behind them, and brought him upstairs, where she gave him the most passionate experience of his life. When they were finished, she took him downstairs and served him a huge breakfast: eggs, potatoes, ham, sausage, blueberry waffles, and fresh squeezed orange juice. When he was finally full, she poured him a cup of steaming hot coffee. As she did, he noticed a dollar bill poking out from under the cup. "All of this is incredible," he said. "But what's the dollar for?" "Well," she said, "last night I told my husband it was your last day and that we should do something special for you. I asked him what we should give you. He said, screw him, give him $1. She smiled. The breakfast was my idea. An experienced older nurse was chatting with a younger, fresh-faced nurse during their shift. The older nurse leaned in and whispered, "Did you see the man in room 14? He has Tom tattooed on his package." The younger nurse, a little amused, replied with a smirk, "It says Tomorrowland." After his second Masters win in a row, Rory McIlroy was driving through Arkansas on a cross-country trip when he noticed the fuel gauge getting low. He pulled into the next gas station. "Attendant, what can I do for y'all?" "Rory, fill it up with premium, please." As the attendant pumped the gas, he slowly walked around the car, looking it over. "Attendant, what kind of car is this? I've never seen one like it before." "Rory, it's the brand new Cadillac. Got Apple CarPlay, heated and cooled seats, panoramic roof, Wi-Fi, adaptive cruise control, 360 degrees cameras, the works. I was gifted it after my second Masters win." Attendant, "Well, I'll be darned, that's the fanciest thing I ever did see." When the tank was full, Rory reached into his pocket to pay. As he pulled out his wallet, a couple of golf tees fell onto the ground. Attendant, "What are them little things?" Rory, "Those? That's what I put my balls on when I drive." The attendant shook his head and said, "Man, after a second Masters win, those Cadillac folks sure do treat you to some fancy stuff." One day, Mrs. Jones went to talk to the minister at the local church. "Reverend," she said, "I have a problem. My husband keeps falling asleep during your sermons. It's very embarrassing. What should I do?" The minister thought for a moment and said, "I have an idea. Take this hatpin with you. I'll watch for when Mr. Jones is dozing off, and I'll motion to you. When I do, you give him a little poke in the leg." The following Sunday, Mrs. Jones brought the hatpin to church. Sure enough, during the sermon, Mr. Jones started to nod off. The minister noticed and said, "And who made the ultimate sacrifice for you?" He nodded toward Mrs. Jones. "Jesus!" Mr. Jones cried, waking up as his wife poked him with the hatpin. "Yes, you're right, Mr. Jones," said the minister. But soon after, Mr. Jones dozed off again. The minister asked, "Who is your Redeemer?" and motioned toward Mrs. Jones. "God!" Mr. Jones yelled out, again getting poked in the leg. "Right again," said the minister. But before long, Mr. Jones fell asleep again. This time, the minister didn't notice, and he picked up the pace of his sermon, making some gestures that Mrs. Jones mistook for signals to poke her husband. The minister asked, "What did Eve say to Adam after she bore him his 99th son?" Mrs. Jones poked Mr. Jones again, and he woke up, shouting, "If you poke me with that thing one more time, I'll snap it in half and make you regret it." "Amen," the congregation replied in unison. John worked hard for a living, so his wife decided to surprise him for his birthday with a treat. She blindfolded him and took him to a local club. When they arrived, the doorman greeted them with a cheerful, "Hey, John! How's it going?" John was surprised, but his wife just smiled and led him inside. After she removed the blindfold, she looked around and asked, "Have you been here before?" John chuckled and replied, "Oh no, he's one of the security guys I meet on my business trips." As they were seated, a waitress approached John and asked, "Want your usual?" She then brought over a Budweiser. His wife was starting to get suspicious. "How did she know you drink Budweiser?" John smiled and said, "Oh, I recognize her. She's the waitress at the bar down the street from work. I drop by on Fridays for a beer after the week." Then, a dancer approached their table, threw her arms around John, and said, "Hi, Johnny, want your usual table dance?" John's wife was livid. Grabbing her purse, she stormed out of the club. John chased after her and saw her climbing into a cab. He jumped in beside her just before she could slam the door. He tried to explain that the dancer must have confused him with someone else, but his wife wasn't having it. She was shouting and calling him all sorts of names. The cab driver turned around, looked at John, and said, "Man, you really picked a wild one this time." A priest was about to finish his tour of duty and was leaving his mission in the jungle, where he had spent years teaching the natives, when he realized that the one thing he never taught them was how to speak English. So he takes the chief for a walk in the forest. He points to a tree and says to the chief, "This is a tree." The chief looks at the tree and grunts, "Tree." The priest is pleased with the response. They walk a little further and he points to a rock and says, "This is a rock." Hearing this, the chief looks and grunts, "Rock." The priest was really getting enthusiastic about the results when he heard a rustling in the bushes. As they peek over the top, he sees a couple of natives in the midst of heavy sexual activity. The priest is really flustered and quickly responds, "Men riding a bike." The chief looks at the couple briefly, pulls out his blowgun and kills them both. The priest goes ballistic and yells at the chief that he has spent years teaching the tribe how to be civilized and be kind to each other. So how could he kill these people in cold blood that way? The chief replied, "My bike." A man wakes up one morning and notices something unusual. He has an erection that just won't go away. Days pass, and it's still there. Concerned, he digs through his closet and puts on the loosest pants he can find, then heads to the local drug store. He walks up to the pharmacy counter and asks the lady there if he can speak with a male pharmacist. She replies, "I'm afraid there's no male pharmacist here, sir. But I'm a registered pharmacist, and so is my sister. We own the store. We're used to dealing with all sorts of personal problems, so don't worry." Desperate, the man glances around, then unzips his pants, pulls out his rather persistent issue, and says, "What can you give me for this?" The woman doesn't flinch and asks, "How long has this been going on?" "Almost 3 days now," he says, his face turning red. The pharmacist nods thoughtfully and then says, "I'll need to consult with my sister for a moment. Please wait here." She disappears behind the counter, returning shortly. The man, anxious, asks, "So what's the verdict?" The pharmacist smiles and says, "Well, the best we can do right now is $5,000 and a half interest in the store." Two 90-year-old men, Mike and Joe, have been friends for life. When it's clear Joe is dying, Mike visits him every day. One day Mike says, "Joe, we both loved football all our lives, and we played football on Saturdays for so many years. Please do me one favor. When you get to heaven, somehow you must let me know if there's any football there." Joe looks up at Mike from his deathbed and replies, "Mike, you've been my best friend for many years, and if it's possible, I'll do that favor for you." Shortly after that, Joe passes away. At midnight a couple of days later, Mike is awakened from a sound sleep by a blinding flashing white light and a voice calling out to him. "Mike, Mike!" "Who is it?" asks Mike. He sits up suddenly. "Who is it?" "Mike, it's me, Joe." "You're not a Joe. Joe has just died. I'm telling you." "It's me, Joe," insists the voice. "Joe, where are you?" "In heaven," replies Joe. "I have some really good news and a little bad news." "Tell me the good news first." "The good news," Joe says, "is that there is football in heaven. All of the friends we knew and played with are here too. We are young again and never get tired." "That's fantastic," says Mike. "That's beyond my wildest dreams. So what could possibly be bad news?" After a short pause, Joe replied, "You're on the team for Saturday." An elderly couple were having dinner one evening when the husband asked, "Martha, soon we will be married 50 years, and there's something I have to know. In all of these 50 years, have you ever been unfaithful to me?" Martha replied, "Well, Henry, I have to be honest with you. Yes, I've been unfaithful to you on 3 occasions during these 50 years, but always for a good reason." Henry was obviously hurt by his wife's confession but said, "I never suspected. Can you tell me what you mean by good reasons?" Martha said, "The first time was shortly after we were married and we were about to lose our little house because we couldn't pay the mortgage. Do you remember that evening I went to see the banker, and the next day he notified you that the loan would be extended? Henry recalled the visit to the banker and said, I can forgive you for that. You saved our home, but what about the second time? Martha asked. Do you remember when you were so sick, but we didn't have the money to pay for the heart surgery you needed? Well, I went to see your doctor one night, and if you recall, he did the surgery at no charge. I recall that, said Henry. And you did it to save my life, so of course I can forgive you for that. Now tell me about the third time. All right, Martha said. So, do you remember when you ran for president of your golf club and you needed 53 more votes?